Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle.
And I am the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
Joining us, whether you're new here, welcome. And if you've been joining us for a while, welcome back. It is so nice to have you. And here we have another person coming in that we haven't seen in a while.
Zainab.
Awesome. All right, so for being here, as I said, we have a number of people here, a lot of familiar faces and a couple new ones. And it's lovely because this time we're going to be having story time, basically. We're going to keep it a little lighter, but still having a sense of purposefulness this evening. And before I get into that, we do have to do our YouTube spiel. Do you want to do a little bit of that, Mushtaq, and then I'll add it?
Okay. Hey, guys, like our video and subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. It would make us ever so happy if you did any and all of these three things.
Yes, it would very much help us out. And people have been doing that, and it's always really lovely. We appreciate that support. It's very direct, and we like the dialogue that ensues. It's often very helpful for us in terms of coming up with ideas from week to week and initiating good conversations that we take with us, sometimes even offline and just have discussions about it. So other than that, we've had a little bit of action on our coffee, our page that we've offered up as a way to connect with us and offer, donations or just, support in a way that allows us to keep doing what we do, even through times of uncertainty, like what we're going through right now. And for those of you who have already donated, we are so grateful to you for, offering support that really does help us keep doing what we do and helps us stay, really passionate about what we're doing, because we know that we'll be able to sustain ourselves going forward with that help. So thank you. And you'll find a link to that in the description below if you want to check that out. It's an easy way to offer just a one-off donation or to donate monthly, which is a cool option that Coffee gives us, and there's no fee except for whatever PayPal charges, and we appreciate that a lot. So thank you again. Anything else?
That's it.
So without further ado, let's talk story time.
Story time.
The Dervish and the Camel, and his camel. Yes.
Dervish and the Camel. And the story goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a dervish, and this dervish loved camels. But dervish basically can be translated as a poor person. So that means he didn't have a camel. He had no way to get a camel. He did not have the money to get a camel. He worked as a day laborer and usually made enough money to eat. And that was about it, keep a poor, pitiful roof over his head. But every night in his night prayer, he made a dua and he said, "Oh Allah, if you could see clear to give me a camel, it would make me so happy. I would love this camel so much. I would take such good care of this animal." And he made this prayer every night because he knew that that was the only way he was going to get a camel, was by the grace of God. And so in the fullness of things, a camel came up as available in the things that people are praying for. And so Allah waved his hand across the waters, and lo and behold, the dervish was offered a camel. "If you take this animal, it is yours." And so the dervish accepts, and he goes up to the camel and he says, "Oh, friend camel, I am so happy that you're going to come and live with me, and I will take good care of you." And the camel turns around and spits in his eye, because camels do that. As it turns out, this was a healthy camel, a strong camel. but the meanest, orneriest camel that anybody had ever seen. This dervish tried to lead the camel to his new home, and he discovered an interesting thing about camels. You know, a horse kicks backwards, a donkey kicks backwards. Sometimes they can rear up and fall on you with their feet, but a camel can kick 360 degrees. They can kick either side, forward, backwards, up, down, with any of their feet. And so imagine this camel being led, and all you have is feet flying everywhere. This poor dervish is trying to lead him, and the camel is kicking him and giving him the evil camel eye and spitting on him from time to time. And he gets him home and he goes, "Camel, relax. I just want to take good care of you." And the camel pees on him. This goes on for days. And every night the dervish is praying. He's saying, "Oh Allah, you sent me a camel, but this camel is broken. You sent me a defective camel. The camel is just like, he's mean." And so it comes time for the dervish to go out and get firewood. And imagine him leading the camel. The camel's kicking in every direction. It's like the camel just doesn't walk. He just kicks and somehow goes forward that way. It's like when all 4 feet are in the air going out, the dervish is pulling it forward. And he gets to where the wood is, and he chops just a bunch of firewood. And he makes the camel finally kneel down, because that's how you load camels. You don't load camels standing up because it's really high up and you can't reach that high. So the camel has to sit down. And so the dervish loads all the wood on the camel's back. And he says, "Get up." And the camel spits in his eye again. And he sits there. And the dervish said, "Get up, please." And the camel just sits there and stares at him. Camels have very pretty eyes. They have eyes that are so soft and limpid and just beautiful brown eyes. This camel managed to have an evil glare with these beautiful eyes, and he was just directing it to the poor dervish. And the dervish takes some of the load off the camel, thinking, "Oh, maybe I overloaded him," and then says, "Get up." The camel sits there and looks at him, belches, probably lets out a tremendous cloud of flatulence, because camels do that. Finally, he gets all the wood off the camel. The camel stands up. He gets the camel back down, puts some wood on. Camel won't get up. Won't get up with even one piece of wood on his back. So the dervish puts the wood on his back and starts leading the camel back home. The camel is taking advantage of this opportunity to kick the dervish, because the dervish can't move very fast with all that wood on his back. People are looking down the road. They're seeing this guy with all the wood on his back leading this unburdened camel, going, "This man is crazy." He gets back home. He unloads the firewood from his back, gets the camel in, built a nice stall for the camel, put some food out for the camel. The camel looks at the food, looks at the dervish, looks at the food, takes a mouthful of food, chews it up, spits it on the dervish, right down his robe. His last clean robe. So the dervish goes in, takes his robe off, he's washing it. Somebody knocks at the door. He says, "Who is it?" It's Ahmed. "I've come to see you." "And I can't come to the door. I don't have any clothes." "What happened to your clothes?" "My camel spit on them." Ahmed thinks this is weird, but he says, "Okay, I was going to invite you out to the Café Khane. We were going to have some coffee and everything, but feel free to stay home with your camel." This goes on again and again and again. Nothing that this dervish can do with this camel will produce anything other than getting kicked, getting bit, or getting spit on. Finally, after the 100th night of prayer, the angel Jibril appears to the dervish. And the angel says, "Oh, dervish, what's wrong? You got what you asked for. You got what you prayed for. You prayed for a camel, you got a camel." And the old dervish says, "But this camel is broken, oh glorious angel. It won't do anything for me." And the angel said, "No, the camel is fine. You didn't ask for a nice camel. You just asked for a camel. So if you want to have this camel, and trust me, Allah is probably not going to give you a second camel, because you're not treating the first one in a way that is conducive with this camel's personality." And the old dervish says to the angel, "Oh, Jibril, mouthpiece of God, what should I do?" And the angel says, "You need to learn the language of the camel." And then he disappears, as angels do. The next morning, after a night of contemplation and meditation and thinking deeply, the old dervish walks out, and before the camel can do anything, the dervish spits right in his eye. The camel was taken aback. He gets the camel to stand up. The camel stands up. Camel goes to kick him. The dervish kicks the camel right in the knee. Camel thinks about kicking him again, decides it might not be a good idea. So he leads the camel out. Today, he's going to gather dates and sell them in the market to make a little money. So he goes, ties the camel up. He goes and picks a bunch of dates. He gets baskets full of dates, loads them on the camel's back. Camel doesn't stand up. The dervish goes and gets a switch, shows it to the camel, says, "Get up." The camel doesn't get up. The dervish walks around behind the camel, whacks the camel on the butt. The camel jumps up just to kick the dervish. The dervish jumps back, runs around, grabs the halter, says, "Let's go." Leads the camel back. From that day on, though the camel was still incredibly mean and would take a swipe at him, at the poor dervish, any chance he got much, much fewer chances. And he had to consider the consequences of his actions. And eventually, over the months and the years, the camel and the dervish managed to find a way to communicate that worked for both of them. They knew each other's moods, which was, in the dervish's case, pretty happy-go-lucky, and in the camel's case, pretty foul. And there's a moral to this story. And I'm not going to tell you what the moral is. We're going to discuss the moral together. But that's the tale of the dervish and the camel. What do you think it means? Don't everybody talk at once. Yes, Jonathan, I see you want to say something.
Well, you're welcome to, yes.
Yeah, I'm still working on it, but I've got a general idea, but give me a few more seconds.
Yeah, take a minute. I have high hopes for you. Anybody want to take a stab at this?
Nancy, sure.
That you really need to learn the language of the situation you're in, and that your habitual responses, even though they might seem ethical, might not be quite what's called for.
This is definitely part of the story. Everyone and everything speaks a different language. And it behooves you to learn that language. People have made fortunes writing books about this very subject. Some of the books are incredibly stupid and yet sell millions of copies, like the 5 Love Languages. That book is sent millions of copies, and it's a stupid book.
Yeah, but it's because it gets at that sense of wanting, that desire to meet people where they're at and communicate through what they want, not what you think they should want. So I did see James unmuted, and then
I was hoping for James here, and then we have Levita is also has got her hand up.
The first thing that sprung to mind, simply because it's a tale involving an animal, is the camel might represent our biological nature or something. You can't just bully it. You have to work with it. You have to understand what it responds to and what repels it in some way.
In this case, you had to bully it.
Yeah. But that's just my shot in the dark, simply because it was a tale involving an animal.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, animal, nervous system, biology, something like that. The automatic
If you
aspect.
called this camel an animal, it would step on your foot.
I'm sure it would. I kept getting the image of one of those sort of cartoons where there's like a whirlwind, all these legs sticking out of it, thrashing about madly.
Yeah, that's basically what this camel was like in my mind's eye when I first heard the story. And as I see it today, I see it's almost like Yosemite Sam riding the camel, and the feet are just going everywhere. But it's actually true that camels can kick sideways. They do not have to kick backwards like a horse or a donkey. They can kick sideways. They can kick forward. They can whack you. It's a little terrifying.
They probably swing their heads around too.
Oh yeah, they'll whack you with their head. They bite the shit out of you, and they got big old fangs. Camels have fangs. They don't just have teeth. They got these fangs.
Never run into any of them. We don't have any in Tasmania, but we have them on the mainland. The Afghan camel train, which was run by a Sufi apparently 100 years ago. Some of the first Muslims in Australia, but I've never actually dealt personally with a camel.
We had those here in Arizona. They tried to create a camel cavalry here, and it was the government, U.S. government, hired this. I think he was from Yemen, to teach these people how to handle camels and such. His name was Haji Ali, and his grave is in this tiny little town in Arizona by the post office, and it's just sitting there. And they couldn't even say his name right, so they called him Hi Jolly. And he was the guy who taught Americans how to handle camels, for which he died and was buried in the middle of nowhere in a grave that is some little tourist marker now. So if you ever get to that town, which is called Quartzsite, go to the post office, find his grave, and read Fatiha over it for him, because nobody else has. But I digress.
Well, that was my response. But when I heard Nancy's response, I thought, oh, she's definitely closer to it than I am.
And there's no close.
I don't. It's not about
There is a right answer. Only I know it, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, no matter what.
Okay.
No, there is no right answer to this. There is knowledge to be gained by contemplating the story.
But I like how you're thinking, James, in that I do think there is this sense in which we, you talked about not bullying the ego, learning to speak its language, to get it to kind of accept its proper role as a support rather than as the one in charge. And in this case, there's a bit of that happening for sure in this story. Yeah.
That's, like I said, that was the first thing I took away. Well, the only thing I've taken away from it so far was that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like he kind of had to, thank you, James. Yeah. I guess I'll wait for people to speak before.
Yeah, let's hear what Levita has to say.
Levita.
Levita, come forth.
You are.
We can't hear what you're saying. Your microphone maybe needs to be turned up or turned on or closer
Is that
to you.
better?
That's
Yes.
better. Yes.
Okay. I think that this is one of those tales that has multiple angles to consider, which I think Nancy and James covered very well. What popped into my head was when you're making a request of a deity, you should take your time and think so that you can be as clear and careful as possible in what you ask for.
Oh, yes. That is a big part of this story. Be careful what you ask for, because when you make prayers, you're liable to get exactly what you ask for, because God wants you to be happy. Yes,
I find
Jane.
that, James, yeah.
That just struck something. Take the animal as a symbol of vitality. Praying for vitality now. Yeah, I'm turning 56. My youthful vitality is definitely waning. And I often think, oh, gee, wouldn't it be great if there's a magic pill to have it back? But then I look how I've had to face things about myself when I can no longer just bounce back on the energy of youth. And if the energy of youth was suddenly come flooding back unconditionally, it'd probably actually in reality be a backwards move for me.
It might kill you, dude.
Yeah. Well, there's that too.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah,
terms of
the energy of youth
personality.
without the body of youth is a very dangerous thing.
Okay, yeah. I had something more personality ethereal in mind, but yes, there's that too. It knocked me. But yes, if I was to pray for the vitality of youth, in even a body to accommodate it, even if I got those things, in many ways, having those things taken away from me has done me a power of good emotionally in terms of
You know what
development.
will happen if you pray for the body and vitality of youth? Allah will arrange for you to win a set of weights.
Yes. Very good.
Yes, Levita.
The other thing, and this is what came up when James was speaking, was that, okay, so when you have the vitality of youth, and we've all heard the phrase, youth is wasted on the young.
Oh God, ain't that true?
Yeah, they've got all that vitality, but no wisdom. So, when you're younger and you need to move something heavy, well, you just flex your biceps and move it. When you get older, you don't have that. So you have to be smarter about how you do things. And, so in some ways it's like, well, if you had the vitality of youth right now and you won that set of weights and used them, you would still be a lot smarter about, well, why am I trying to lift this when there's a perfectly good hand truck over here?
Yeah. Yeah. And even, I mean, I have weights that I lift and I finally got them all back.
Yay. With room to use them.
With room to use them, yes. And none of them are very heavy. I mean, I've got a 45-pound club bell and I can lift it, but I don't usually. I usually work with 5 and 10-pound club bells. I got a 10-pound mace. I got a 20-pound mace. I got a 25-pound mace. I don't use the last two, other than occasionally to give myself a bit of an ego boost. But that 10-pound mace is enough. It's a matter of working smarter, not harder. And I will never look like Arnold Schwarzenegger did in his 20s. That will not happen.
It's a good thing because nobody wants that
no.
At this point.
I'd have to buy all new clothes.
Such a hassle, right?
Yeah.
Jonathan.
Yeah, I see that the camel represents people in general. We have to interact with people in our lives because there's things we need from other people. but people in general are difficult to deal with. They're belligerent, they're not kind, they're mean. So it would be nice to think that I could interact with people with kindness and consideration, and I could get what I need from other people by being nice. But it doesn't work like that most times. And to try and be nice to people and considerate, often I would just be considered a fool or weak. So I've got to approach them in the same way. It would be like a transactional relationship rather than a relationship of love and kindness. I feed you, camel, you carry my stuff. There's no love lost between us. We have no, there could be so much more. We could be companions to one another, but that's off the table. It's just, I give you food, you carry my stuff. And it can work based on that.
Interesting thought.
Yeah, you're creeping up on one of the important points of this story.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the ideal is for kindness and generosity and patience to be the way forward. And sometimes it really is, but sometimes the door needs to be opened by more assertive means, right? In order to, for some people, earn their respect. They want to know if you can stand toe to toe with them. Interesting to me. Yeah.
So basically you have to deal with things and people and situations according to their nature and behavior.
Yes. If there is any core message to this story, that might be it, though it might be stated mostly in the world. What you are dealing with is mechanical nature. You are dealing with the behavior of machines. The camel was a stimulus response machine. So are you, until you break out of that. So is everybody you meet. And so it behooves you to examine every mechanical entity that you bump into and ask yourself, what is the programming and what is the programming language of this individual, whether it be camel or cat or human? When you can ask that question and when you can be awake to the situation, you can determine the correct language to speak with an asleep mechanical individual. And when you can do that, you can alter their behavior. Without that, you can't alter their behavior.
Yeah, so I mean, extrapolating from that, right? It doesn't have to be a belligerent, mean person for whom they need that reflected back to them to be motivated. It could be a nice, lovely person.
That's fairly rare that it
Yeah.
needs to be belligerent. I find that with a lot of people, there's a particular kind approach that works really well.
And yet that can be mechanical.
Yeah,
as well.
and it will be totally mechanical. It's designed to push the right buttons, the cooperation buttons.
Yeah. But it's exactly the same thing. I think that it's just interesting that we are using the imagery of not niceness because that shakes people up. They're like, oh,
it's an Arab story.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some rough edges there.
Remember, the Arabs were a rough people who lived on the edge in one of the roughest, meanest deserts in the world. So sometimes their stories reflect that.
Yeah. Yeah, because there are people who are going to hear this story and be like, oh my God, animal abuse. That's not it. But that is characteristic of the
Yeah, but
story.
those people will not look at the story and look at the camel and go, oh, human abuse.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll give their mechanical nature forces them to give the camel, the camel was an asshole. The camel was a total asshole. And they give him a pass.
Right.
Because he's got four
Because,
legs.
yeah, that's that mechanical sense of saying, oh, well, animals, always protection, human.
Yeah. And these people will
abuser.
go, oh, but the camel's just a dumb animal. And that is not in evidence. A dumb animal means an animal that cannot speak. And I suggest to you that the camel was speaking very clearly and very loudly. He was not a dumb animal. As a matter of fact, the camel's probably smarter than the animal rights person.
Yep. So, Osama.
Yes. Two things came to mind. The first, or yeah, that stood out. The first is the patience that the dervish had for the 100 days or X amount of days.
Yeah.
Which at that point I was like, I'm surprised he didn't eat the camel. Like
sell the camel, yeah.
Right? Sell the camel or
give
eat
it away to
He's
somebody who he really didn't like.
Right. And giving the fact that it was a dervish, right? And
yeah,
like poor, the image of, dervish, somebody who doesn't have anything.
Yeah, patched robes, the whole 9 yards.
This asshole camel eating him out of house and home. Yeah.
Exactly. So that the patience that the dervish had to endure. However, that also spoke to the fact that there was this love between the dervish towards the camel. He really wanted the camel. He was just disappointed that it was a mean camel. But there was still that that love that was there. And what was interesting is after figuring out the language of the camel, to behave in such a way, my mind went to the Arabic word for to tame an animal. It's the same root actually that is used for to exercise. So like exercising, or like yoga, right? Like Sufis have exercises, breathing exercise, all of that kind of stuff. It's the same word, the root word for it. So in a sense, it seemed that the camel, or the quality of the camel, might have represented that quality of the ego within the individual.
Yes. That is an absolutely correct part of the story. There's another aspect to this that we haven't mentioned.
I actually, is it okay if I read James's comment, or would you
go
like
ahead.
to share that? Thank you, Osama. That was wonderful. James says, navigating quote unquote camel habits, quote unquote camel unquote habits of others is so much easier when you see and accept your own inner quote unquote camel. And I think that's a great point, right? We can have more compassion for other people's eccentricities, mechanicalness, when we realize, oh, either I do something similar, even if it looks totally different, or, oh, I've been there and I remember doing that. Because that's going to happen time and time again. And we're always going to encounter that. And we should not forget that we have that part inside of us. Sometimes it's more hidden, sometimes it's more visible, where we are insufferable assholes. And that is part of this exciting journey.
Yeah. So here's a point for the story. The dervish prayed for God knows how long for this camel. And he got the camel. He cannot reject God's gift. I mean, I remember back in the 60s or something, there was a cartoon of the guy going, I want. And then all of a sudden, I got, I don't like it. Yeah. You can't be that guy, especially when you ask God for something in prayer. If you get the camel, you have to be grateful for the camel. And so he wasn't going to throw the camel away. He wasn't going to give it away to somebody who he didn't like, even though that would have been fun. Think about the person who you dislike the most in the world and give them this camel. Of course, the camel would have been nice just to spite the guy.
So what's the remedy for that then? Not only is this a story about learning to witness people and ourselves where we're at and shift our communication accordingly, but it is also about the sense of, you know, two parts on the second one, which is be careful what we ask for. And then when we get what we have asked for and we are not exactly satisfied, how do we, what do we do?
What we do is approach the gift with gratitude, no matter what.
And that can be a life-changing lesson in itself.
Yeah. You have to remember where the camel came from. And that, trust me, where I learned this story, that was a catchphrase. Where did the camel come from?
Hire camel, like
yeah,
one of those famous sayings that has a whole
there's
narrative behind it.
There are camel-based cultures. And you get a lot of sayings about camels and camel-based cultures.
Well, actually, my grandfather wrote a book, encyclopedia about camels.
Yeah,
I love that. That's
Sweet.
awesome.
Yep, a whole book about all the words in Arabic and sayings that are associated with the camel, with camels.
Cool.
That would be a brilliant book. You should translate it into English.
Yeah, I had that thought, and it's a thick book.
Yeah.
So it's
one entry at a time, man.
Or pick some favorites that you think would be nice to share with others, and I'm sure we would love to learn more too.
Yeah, because we like camels, even though they are ornery.
Very cool, Osama. Looking forward to that. Inshallah. Nancy.
Yeah, I was just wondering. I mean, camels don't have a reputation for being especially tractable. And I was wondering, what can you reasonably expect from a camel?
You can expect it to spit on you if given a chance.
Yeah, but I mean, this was an unusually awful camel. What's a normal camel?
I knew.
What makes you think that wasn't a normal camel?
Well, I assume he would not have that, he would have known what he was getting into if that was a normal camel.
Yeah,
maybe
that's true.
She does have a point there.
And maybe he just had a fantasy about camels because he never had one.
There's that.
Yeah, camels can be as good an animal as you would ever want to have. I mean, you look at the Tuaregs and their camels. They are great camel breeders and riders. And the camel for them was life.
Best friends.
Yeah, in the deep deserts of the Sahara, You know, the Tuaregs were sometimes the only people who could cross areas of that desert, and they did it on camelback. And they bred the greatest racing camels in the world. And the reason that they got along with the camels is because they knew the camels. They understood that the camel had a mechanical nature, and they were able to speak its language.
They may have also been breeding camels for tractability because it's what they wanted and what they cared about.
Yeah, we're talking
Perhaps.
about Tuaregs, though. Attractability is not really in their vocabulary.
Okay, I was thinking about I don't remember the title, but a fantasy book about Irish people and horses, where they thought the English were crazy for wanting spirited horses. They wanted tractable horses.
We would have to probably have a conversation with someone.
Yeah, I can't
culture.
speak to how the Irish did, but I know the Comanche, who were considered the greatest light cavalry of their time by some of the biggest generals in the United States armies. And they loved spirited horses, but they didn't try to break the spirit of the horse. They treated the horse as a member of their family, which means, again, they understood how to speak to the horse's mechanical nature.
Mm-hmm.
And we have definitive proof that the Comanche were so good that they could outride and outshoot arrows with Mongols, which I find very interesting. But that's a different story.
Any other thoughts? Who have we not heard from yet?
We have not heard from Zainab, and I was getting ready to call on her because Zainab is wise and knows about these things.
I like how the conversation's rolling, and I wanted to add how basically it brings the community together, and there's more interaction happening by learning the mechanical nature of things. Like rather than omitting and deleting those interactions, diving into them and finding a way to negotiate or interact.
Yeah, I like that.
Exactly right.
Which is quite it can be soft, but at the same time it's not really soft.
No, because you have an outcome that you want to have, and you just do what is necessary to achieve that outcome. And that's not soft. It can appear soft because you can use soft tools to get where you're going. But there is an outcome that you have intended. And I'm using my words very specifically there.
I would imagine we have to be self-disciplined too, or whoever is in the position of knowing, let's say, it's challenging because we all have little bits of this in us, this sense of mechanicalness that other people have to navigate around, you know. So when I say we, I don't mean that we are exempt from this dynamic in that way. But I would say that we have to really be careful about you don't want it to fall into a means to an end kind of situation where it's like, oh, because this person is behaving mechanically, they are not deserving of ethical treatment. And so there's a line of discipline to be walked where you are balancing, okay, what are they going to respond to with what kind of behavior do I want to uphold and demonstrate and model? And so that's a layer of complexity that gets added to this.
And that there's a part of the story. In the beginning of the story, the camel was acting through his mechanical nature, and the dervish is acting through his mechanical nature.
Right. Yep.
The angel appearing to the dervish is the moment of awakening.
It's pointing the way.
Yes. After which the dervish acts from his essence. He acts from the awake state in dealing with the camel. And I would imagine that the dervish was in a state of flow when he dealt with the camel the day after the angel showed up. Just a thought.
Yeah, ideally that would be the case, yes.
Yeah.
And as far as it seems to be implied that as time goes on, the relationship between the dervish and the camel evolves in such a way that there's kind of a balance found between them. And we don't know for sure, but perhaps there has been a sense of connection developing between them as a result.
Yeah. Sort of like the Odd Couple.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting thing to imagine happening as the story progresses.
Yeah. And as far as we know, the camel is not capable of awakening. He's a two-brained being, not a three-brained being. And so what is happening is that the dervish is slowly and gently, or not so gently, reprogramming the camel's mechanical nature to be more copacetic, which you can only do from an awake state, and only do correctly from an awake state.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, you got to know what's needed in the moment that it's needed. Otherwise, it's nonsensical.
Yeah, you don't hit the camel over the head with a brick when what it really needs is a scritch on the muzzle. And when you scritch the camel on the muzzle, you have to be awake because you're going to have to snatch your hand back really quick before he bites it. Which is almost, I mean, it's like petting a cat, right? You pet a cat and the cat's loving it, and then the next thing you know, the cat is rending your hand. You have to feel when that moment changes. So who else have we not heard from? Cherie, we have not heard from Cherie. She looks like she's dying to say something.
Or not.
Or not.
I think everybody said what I wanted to say, but I also thought, does it have to be a camel? Because he could have wanted a donkey. And the things that you want, you have to adjust, because the thing that you get blessed with doesn't come in the way that you had it in your own frame. So it could be, your housing situation, the thing that you really want to make sure is that you're warm or safe, secure, you have reliable internet, all these different things. And if it comes in a package that is unexpected, you have to adjust. And that's what you're talking about, the language, figuring how something works, or how a being operates, how an animal operates. we just have to be clear about, are the needs that we were thinking of being met? And if they're being met, then we have to adjust, not the other little thing that we're working with. So the camel is not necessarily going to be a camel. So, it's like a fast car. Some people want to have a fast car, but really, do you just get to A to B? Do you really need a big house? No. Have you got everything met? Yes. Well, that's it. That's your blessing. It's been fulfilled.
Yeah. And sometimes it's nice to have a big house.
But only if you have someone to clean it for you.
Well, Noor has me for that. So
when I was younger, I wanted a big house, but I'm so glad I don't now. So, and it's just like, wow, I don't want to spend my time cleaning a house. Yeah. But it's, just figuring out, how does this work? How does this work? This is what I asked for. And then when you figure it out, and sometimes you think, I actually have everything I needed. It was there. So if that if the dervish needed something, it could have been a cart, to carry the wood or collect dates or whatever, but he had his
which is another reason why you have to be careful what you ask for.
It's the same like marriage. People go, I really want to get married. I don't want to ever die alone and all that sort of thing. And then you got the worst possible spouse ever.
Yeah.
Jeepers.
Yeah, you would have been better off with the camel.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at. That don't ask for too much, because you have everything you need. And it's just figuring out how to make those resources go a bit further, and not get annoyed at God because it didn't come in the form that you expected.
Yeah, oftentimes you get exactly what you ask for.
Yeah. So yesterday, one of my darling friends died.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. I'm not sorry, because I said that to someone. I said, I'm not sorry. It was a mercy.
Yeah.
Mercy. And I am grateful that she had the most perfect ending. Her husband's holding her hand. It's quiet. She's had the whole family with her all day. There was karaoke. There was much love. And that's how she just slipped away. Just one moment, strong pulse. 5 minutes later, not strong pulse. And that's it, the end. Yeah. And I thought, wow, that is incredible. To have what she wanted was to be surrounded by love. So, that the whole thing, no, I don't want cancer. No, I don't want this. I don't want that, or whatever. Well, you have to accept sometimes that's your situation. This is the camel you got. So, how are you going to work? So she did. And she said, I am really grateful for that. She said, that's all that's necessary now. Her life, short as it was, she said, I got to the top of the mountain. And so there's sometimes, the things that we're desiring, they're just distractions, so you just got to deal with your reality and be very clear and work towards that. So what did she want? She wanted to be surrounded by love. She was, in the end. That was wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Sheree. Thank you.
It's just a clarity thing that you don't waste your time on brutalizing this poor camel. You got to use skillful means. I think I got that term from a mutual friend, and also from you, Mushtaq, using skillful means, and being that you can't force something.
You have to realize, though, that sometimes skillful means is a swift kick in the ass.
Yeah.
So skillful means is what works in the moment, not what one's idea of how things should be. Everybody should be nice to camels. Sometimes the way to be nice to the camel is to use the switch to get him up.
Yep. I'm okay with that. It's just making the camel be something it's not.
Oh no, that's what the camel is. The camel is an obstinate creature that will save your life.
Yeah.
You know, Arab culture would not have existed in the way that it was. You wouldn't have the Renaissance of the Middle Ages or anything like that without the camel.
Mm.
The camel was what moved spices across the world. The camel allowed people to inhabit areas that were uninhabitable. The camel was a main form of transport along the Silk Road. All of these things. So we can't forget the importance of camels and knowing how to motivate them.
Skillfully.
Skillfully.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Chris, are you there, Chris? We also have Owen that we have not.
Yes, we have not heard from Owen yet. Owen,
yes, I am, though I missed the beginning of the story.
You missed the story, yeah.
Gas.
Yeah, missed the story, caught some of the hints, and I'll be watching the re-record to hear the story. Looking forward to it.
Hope you're doing well, Chris. Big time.
Yeah, all good. No,
yeah.
Yeah, no baby yet. Couple false alarms, but we'll see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for you.
Thank you.
Owen, do you have any thoughts you might like to share?
Yeah. Where my mind went was if from the beginning the Dervish had the foresight to ask a camel that is polite, God. And I don't know if that would I don't think that would technically resolve everything. I think there'd probably be a different kind of test delivered in the response to the prayer.
And it would have probably taken longer to come up with the camel.
That too.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be challenges, like you're saying, Owen. So that's an excellent point. I feel like it is rare, and it also is dependent on our attitude that we bring to the situation, right? For something to go flawlessly, super smoothly, no hitches, no hangups, just, I got exactly what I wanted. It's awesome. Like, some of that is going to be the attitude that we bring to the situation.
Yeah.
And
that's only happened once in my life where I got exactly what I wanted.
And that was rare, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was a miracle.
Or is that going to be a cliffhanger, or are we going to hear?
Well, it should be obvious to you.
Being sappy right now.
I'm being sappy, yes. But I'm telling the absolute truth as well.
We got lucky.
Funny thing is, I didn't even know I wanted it. But that's a different story. So
yeah,
that's the story of the Dervish and the Camel.
And everyone has brought up such excellent.
Yeah, everybody's answer was the right answer, which I love. Nobody had a wrong answer. I was hoping live for those wrong answers so I can go, no, you're wrong. But but unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Everybody gets the right answer.
Yeah, and this has been such a lovely conversation, and I hope it offers some food for thought. And even as a listener myself, it's been food for thought, given that, as Cherie mentioned, we're dealing with our living space saga, and that has involved a lot of appreciating where we're at and being grateful for what is, as opposed to it being exactly what we wanted. And yet we've been caught, every time we feel like we're falling, we've been caught in a safety net of support of one form or another, and that is in itself a miracle as well.
So I'm going to switch us over to Brady Bunch mode. Here we are. Look at that.
Brady Bunch mode. Yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with us for this hour.
Yeah,
and
it was, as always, it is delightful to hang out with all of you. We have such smart people who come and hang out with us.
amazing humans. It's
Yes.
been seeing familiar faces I haven't seen since the retreat. Some of you, it's just really nice to have you here. All right, so we can to each other, wave to everybody watching
Say
on
goodbye,
YouTube,
and we will
see
see you next week.
Bye.